This is Your Two Cents, the podcast, made possible by credit unions in partnership with Canadian Content Studios. I'm Jonathan Torrance. Today, Sylvia and Alicia sit down with Deena Eddison from credit unions to hear all the FAQs she gets as a financial expert. No question too big or too simple. Deena is here to break it down for us.
There is so much shame around financial literacy. It feels like everyone but you knows everything about it. The truth is, there is so much for all of us to learn, from the basics all the way to the complicated stuff.
You may remember our guest from Your Two Cents' Financial Jeopardy. We've got Deena Eddison, a financial expert from credit unions, here with us today. Every single day, she's helping answer money questions big and small. And today we're going to get her to spill on some of the FAQs to get you feeling a little more comfortable talking about money.
Welcome to the podcast, Deena.
Welcome.
Hello. How are you guys?
I am so excited to have this conversation because I needed the Deenas of financial literacy so much sooner than I ever got them. So I'm excited because I've gotten a chance to meet you and see you in person and understand what a sweet, kind, caring human being you are. And I think for so long, I thought anybody at a bank that was going to be talking about money and like debt and all of those scary things were going to be like mean or make me feel really bad about it. Or, I think we have this idea built up in our head when it comes to like money about the people who are going to be talking to us about our money. And then when I got to meet all of these incredible people who work for the credit unions, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is not at all who I anticipated I'd be talking to my money about. So I'm excited for the world to get to meet you. So for me, growing up in our house, we did not really talk about money. And I definitely think that it led to a little bit of shame and embarrassment on my end when I got myself into a really bad spot financially. And I say bad spot financially in a sense that like I didn't know enough. So all of the things that I think I was doing with my money at the time felt responsible or right, whether that was defaulting on a cell phone bill so that I could pay my rent or, it didn't feel like I was making irresponsible decisions. It just felt like I didn't have enough money. And I wish I would have known so much more then. And I'm still honestly learning now. It turns out a lot of people feel that way and are really afraid to ask questions that they think will make them feel silly. So can you tell us, Deena, what some of the most frequently asked questions are that you get?
Absolutely. And my goal coming into the financial world was to add as much pizzazz and sparkle that I could, because my idea of a financial institution or a big bad banker was someone in a suit that was going to tell me yes or no, or you're doing it wrong. So no, that is not what we want to do. I'd love to share some tips with you guys or share some things that people have come to me and just said, like, I'm super embarrassed to ask you this, but I don't know what this means or whatnot. So the first one I was going to touch on was, which is kind of funny because we're in 2023 and we were just laughing about the technical difficulties that we just had. But a lot of people are still so nervous about using online banking and how to do things online, such as sending e-transfers, or they need to send a wire transfer. And they're like, that sounds so scary and stuff you see in movies. But people are so scared that they're going to get scammed, and rightfully so, because there are so many scams out there. But yeah, our goal is to just say, like, it's not that it's easy. We can teach you how, and there are so many safeguards in place, and to let people know that they're not the only ones that are having those nervous feelings about using technology.
We grew up with technology. Like I grew up learning technology. Like I feel like I was at the forefront of learning all of these technical things, like chat rooms. The internet went from dial up to like high speed when I was like in my teens. So I personally don't really have any fear around using the internet itself. Would I be common in saying that that's like an older generation, like a generational fear? And is there like, are there classes offered? Or is that something you offer at the credit union to people who come in and ask those questions?
Absolutely. So I'm based out of Newfoundland, and we are in a town with an older generation, and we recently just introduced two-step verification, which everyone is super annoyed with because you have to log in and then you get a text message and you have to put in the code. But we get people come in and say, I just need you to help me log in. I just want to see what my balance are. But what we ended up doing was we contacted our IT teams and said, can we have tablets in branch to help people log in and to just step by step show them how to do it. So that's kind of what the credit unions have tried to do to help people. But yes, it's typically the older generation, because like you said, our age group, we learned as we went, and it was trial by error, and we knew that it was safe and we know what's not safe, whereas they're kind of totally scared of scams. And then I find on the flip side of that, the younger crowd is like, yeah, no, I'll click that link. Yeah, no, we're good, because they don't understand yet that everything is permanent on the internet. So
yeah, I think that's just it's humorous for me because we grew up on it, but genuinely the people in my life who I know who have made the mistakes of clicking the buttons and not asking enough questions are my generation. So I think that's an interesting fact for you. But I love that that's something that the credit unions offer, is that hands-on direct support for the people who are feeling concerned about it.
I also think the thing that it speaks to is that financial literacy is an ever-changing thing. The people who are coming in who are maybe afraid of the technology are still learning their way through things. We are going to face the same things as we get older and things change and the technology changes, and we're going to have to find ourselves continuing to keep up with that. And I think Deena, you touched on such an interesting point where the younger generation is very tech savvy, but almost in the flip side where money in a physical way isn't as prevalent for them. So they're so much more trusting and maybe even more likely to click on the wrong thing or have their money go to the wrong thing, because they're so comfortable with technology. They're just not second guessing any of it. So I think it just speaks to this idea that there's no question that is too big or too small. We are going to have to learn about money, whether it's how we actually physically handle it, changing on us, or even the questions that we have. So I think that even though maybe we're seeing the uptake for an older generation being a little bit more scared, it just speaks to we always are going to have to keep learning and keep ourselves fresh with what's happening with our money and how we access it.
Yeah, we were also ingrained, like I said, we grew up with the technology, and we were ingrained to say, this is scary, this is new, not to touch it, which is why we're so diligent in our online security, I should say. But whereas the older generation might not be, and the younger generation, again, might not be. The next thing that I was going to say that we get quite often, and this one actually speaks to myself personally, is the fear of not wanting to speak to a financial advisor because they think that they need a lot of money to have to speak to a financial advisor. It's quite a common assumption to say that, well, why would I speak with a financial advisor when I don't have a lot of money? And we say, well, they're going to help you, make your money work for you and help you get to the point where you're more comfortable and make financial decisions more wisely. So that's quite a common fear, I guess, for people that we speak to. I don't have enough money to talk to a financial advisor.
I relate to this. To be very honest, everybody who I've spoken to within the realm of the credit unions that I've given my story to has said, that's nothing new. That's normal. What you're experiencing is not uncommon. And I think I needed to hear that, and hearing that from a professional being like, you're in debt, but so is everybody else, and we'll figure it out, I think would have been such a reassuring thing, rather than me being so terrified of it that I just didn't. And Deena, is it true that speaking to a financial advisor at the credit unions is a free service that y'all offer?
Correct. So, well, in branch, we do so much training every year and to teach people to make wise financial choices. But we also have partners that we can refer to, and it's typically free. You can go ahead and you can speak to a financial advisor, and they can help you decide what's best for you, because what's best for you may not be what's best for Sylvia.
I remember going and talking to a financial advisor. I had run into someone and someone said, oh, you really need to talk to them. and I had no money. And I thought, I'm not booking a meeting with this person to expose the fact that I have no money. It felt so embarrassing to me. And I'll never forget, I took the meeting, I went to this place. I was dressed up and thinking I needed to, present in a way that made me feel like I was worthy of being there. And the person was so kind and gave me a lot of really helpful information. And I feel like it was such a shock to be received in a way that was warm and welcoming, to say, here's the steps that you can take when you are ready. Here's how much you potentially could be saving based on how much you have right now. If you don't have enough to, you're living paycheck to paycheck, here's what you could be doing to maybe think about things differently. And I think part of that stigma went so far that didn't eliminate my fear, unfortunately, that as I started building up my career and making more money, then I was clinging to all the money in my bank account because I knew what it felt like to not have enough. So then I was like, it needs to sit in my checking account where I can see it and it is not going anywhere, but it's not doing anything for you there. So then to take the leap to talk to someone when I did actually have something to invest, watching that money not be sitting in my bank account took a huge toll on me because I was now terrified to not be able to look at that money every day. So I think there's just such an unfortunate, exactly to your point, like you need to have money to talk about money. I hope everyone starting off starts talking about money sooner, because I lost out on my money working harder for me when I started to have it. And I also didn't know what I didn't know when I didn't have enough of it. So I just think like the sooner you can get in and, I'm listening to your voice and I'm like, again, me too. I wish I had a Deena. It's not as scary as we think. And I think every single time I've been vulnerable and had an honest conversation about money with someone who is a professional, I have left feeling like $1,000,000, pardon my pun, but truly empowered and excited. Even if I don't have the things right now to be able to get to where I want to go, I have knowledge. And that's such a cool feeling.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me into my next one, is that quite often people say, well, I have this loan for this and I have this fee and I don't know what it's for, but I pay it. Or this fee comes out of my account and I don't know what it's for, but anyways, the bank charges me for it. People don't often know how loans are set up or what an interest rate means or how a credit card works. And these are conversations that I wish that people were more comfortable having. I wish that people would say, like, what is this fee on my bank statement? Like, what does this mean? Am I in the right package? And those are questions I wish people weren't so shy to talk about, because as a little bit of a financial nerd, I wish that people would come to me and say, like, is there something I can change to do better? I'm like, yes, absolutely there is. Let's talk about it.
I love that approach, because definitely for me and just my personal experience, when you're talking about those fees and those things, like when I turned 18, I could get a credit card. Nobody talked to me about that. It wasn't forced to like go in and have a conversation with somebody who had knowledge around money. It was just, I get to have a credit card now. I can apply for that. I can do that online. All I had to go in was see a teller and show them my ID, and 2 short weeks later, I had a credit card for $1,000. Nobody talked to me about what that rate was on it. Nobody asked me if I understood what I was getting myself into. And I think for me, I have felt definitely betrayed by my experience with banking in certain areas with my bank specifically, because I feel like they led me down a path without giving me information. And then I worked so hard to get myself out of it all by myself. I did it all alone. And now that my bank account has a different number in it, I get phone calls from my bank being like, do you want to learn about investing? Do you want to learn about this? Do you want to come in and talk to somebody? And I'm like, where were you when I needed to have these conversations before I got myself into a shitty position? So I love that what you just said there, is saying that you wish people asked more questions at the beginning and that you wish people genuinely knew what they were getting themselves into, because I think there's so much power in, like Sylvia said earlier, that knowledge. And for me, I'm definitely jaded when it comes to my experience with banks and the people within the bank, because in my head, they want my money. They don't care how much of it they take, or in my head. But then I'm hearing you speak, which this is why I was so excited for people to listen to your voice, Deena. And it comes from such a caring, kind standpoint of genuinely loving and being interested in finances and wanting people to be like successful. So when it comes to starting a credit card, opening a credit card or a bank account or interest rates, etc., what would you say is the best question for people to be asking about the accounts that they're starting them for themselves?
First and foremost, what is the interest rate? And we hear this word all the time. And again, people are saying, well, what does that even mean? The higher your interest rate, the more you are paying to this credit card company for them to give you money. I don't know how else to explain it, but the interest rate, there's always going to be a card out there that has a lower interest rate. Secondly, would be the fees. What fees are associated? If you're taking cash from that credit card, you're probably getting charged a fee for it. What is the annual fee? You're probably paying a fee every year just to have that card in your wallet. Is there a fee for being past due? Sometimes if you're past due your 30-day mark when you owe that payment, sometimes there's an additional fee for that. Just find out those a couple of things, and that will do you so much good. Also, is there a fee? Sometimes, believe it or not, there are fees for not holding a balance on your credit card. Like, that's crazy. So just because I'm a good credit, I'm responsible in using my credit card, I get charged a fee for that. Like, that's nuts.
The one thing I didn't know either when I got my first credit card, I knew nothing about how to use a credit card. Same thing, got mine, had no clue. No one talked to me about it. And I didn't know that paying your minimum balance, I did not know how the interest worked. So I had no clue that I was going to literally throw away money because I wasn't paying that off. And in my head, again, because I was so protective of the money in my bank account, it made more sense for me to keep it there than to pay off my credit card, not understanding that I was throwing away money for free, even if I had enough to pay that off. And so I just think it's there should be like a driver's test for credit cards. Like, can you answer these questions? Because we are 18. When I think about an 18-year-old now, I can't even believe that I could do that. And that's nothing against the lenders and the banks. I just think it's such a big responsibility. And unfortunately, the repercussions can live throughout your adult life if you aren't set up responsibly from the beginning. And I do think that while there is so much information out there, we do need to take some of that accountability as the consumers to seek out the answers to our questions, because there's just not enough people like Deena in the world to be actively chasing us to tell us all the wonderful things. But I just think that if people can be more comfortable saying, what is that fee on my thing? Like, asking those questions. I think the biggest thing is we've attached shame to money forever. It's such a general problem. So when you don't know how interest on your credit card works, you feel like an idiot. And so asking those questions that are so deeply connected to your money, which is so personal, I have felt dumb so many times. Even when I was ready to start investing, when I finally had money to invest, I felt stupid for not investing sooner. So there's just a shame cycle that I think perpetuates all of this. And I think the more you can just get comfortable going, if I didn't know what my doctor said to me on a report, I would ask. Do the same thing with your money, because there's no shame in it. Someone's going to be willing to give you the answers to that in a nice way.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are nice people. There are more Deenas out there, I promise. I thought when I saw someone that had a big fancy house, 4 cars, 4 skidoos, I thought they had money. I thought that they had the money to buy those items out of pocket. It wasn't until I got into my financial career that I realized that they probably have tons of debt. They did not pay out of pocket for those items. And I wish that younger people knew that these people are not, well, I mean, not everybody, this doesn't go for everybody, but these people are not thriving financially most times, right? Most times we see it's usually debt and loans and mortgages, whereas the house next door that has a 10-year-old car and secondhand patio furniture, they're probably better off financially in reality. But we always think the shiny new toys mean that people have money, and that's typically not always the case.
So the other thing that I find interesting on that same token in a different way is that I also believed you needed to have a ton of money to, let's say, buy a house. I just didn't know how to make my money work for me at all. So in a way that could help me out in the long run versus overspending and not necessarily living within my means. I thought people were buying new cars with a heap of money that was sitting under their mattress, or they were renovating their house with the money that they had saved up for all this time. And so going through a home renovation, I learned a lot differently about how to make my own assets work for me, which I had absolutely no idea until I was forced into a situation that I had to learn that. And so I think just generally understanding, like, keeping up with the Joneses is a dangerous thing to do, but also just not understanding how you can smartly do things. Like, we lease our car. We were able to leverage the changing car industry to get money back when we leased our new car because of how things had gone. So I've just learned like little tips and tricks over the years of that stuff. But I literally thought people had to be sitting like Scrooge McDuck, diving into their pennies to be able to afford things. But I agree with you on the flip side of that, is that that can be a very slippery slope as well too, if you're not watching what you're spending as well.
Yeah. And I like, for me, the first time I really experienced, like, in my brain, the biggest thing we spent money on when we didn't have money was our wedding. So when we were thinking of our wedding, I was watching friends and family and seeing people spend these thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on the wedding, not really realizing that it's not all upfront. Like, often you are spending, you have like deposits and things and smaller ways of spending that money, and it's not an all upfront fee. And planning for my wedding really taught me that, like, I needed to see 3 different options before I made the choice of which one, because I needed to see what was going to be the most financially feasible. And to be honest, planning my wedding was the thing that really helped me realize that, like, I could have what I wanted and what I felt attached to without having to spend a lot of money on it. And our goal when we got married was to break even. Our goal was to we had been together for so long, so we knew that most people who are coming to our wedding were going to give us some type of cash gift. So our goal was to spend at least amount of money as we possibly could, so that when we were getting our gifts, we would break even in our wedding and we wouldn't put ourselves into debt starting our lives together, or even more debt and starting our like lives together. But yeah, I think too, like, it's this concept, like you said, Deena, that most people also have debt. So even the fancy shiny people who own these big fancy shiny things have and can have just as much debt as those who don't have the fancy shiny things. And debt is debt. Nobody cares where your debt collectors don't care where that debt comes from. They just see debt. And I think often people like my sister and her husband, who don't have all kinds of brand new shiny things and don't live this lavish life, feel shitty about the debt that they had, when realistically someone who's living, who they're probably comparing themselves to, carries the same, if not more, debt. It just looks a little bit different on the outside. So I completely agree there that it's important to like realize that it's deeper than just the thing you're seeing on the outside, for sure.
And I want to follow up with saying, like, the people that have the nice shiny things, it's not that I'm not saying they don't have money, because they would have had to qualify for these loans and these mortgages to be able to get these shiny things. But yeah, I guess, Alicia, to what you said, like, try not to compare, because everyone's story is so different and so case by case. But try not to be like, well, I don't have a new car every year. Well, they don't either. That's probably leased every year.
It's all relative too. Like, that's the other thing that people forget. If you're living within your means, or like essentially what it costs you to be in debt, it's also costing people who have lots of money to be in debt. Because if they're living within the means of what they have, you can have people that look completely different but are in just the same amount of percentage of debt, and or living without certain things. It just looks differently on the outside because of the amount of money that they have. So I think, yeah, like you said, it's this game of comparison, when realistically you're not comparing anything factual. You're just comparing like what things look like on the outside.
I have one more point to touch on. And it's a question that we get a lot, and most times in the lending world, but my credit score. What does my credit score mean? Why did my credit score drop? Why did it increase? And a lot of people don't know how to read their credit scores. And it's not something you always think about. I'm going to wake up today and study my credit score. But I geek out over this stuff again, like I'm a financial nerd a little bit. But a lot of people don't realize that the kind of credit you have affects your credit score, meaning the more revolving debt. And when I say revolving debt, it means like if you have a line of credit or a credit card, you can pay it down, but it doesn't close. You can reuse it again and pay it down again, meaning it's revolving. The more accounts that you have like that on your credit that are open, it's going to lower your credit score, because that is debt that you can reuse again. When someone is looking at you for a new loan, they say, well, they only have $1,000 used on this $5,000 credit card, but tomorrow they can max that out. So like the amount of accounts that you have open on your credit card could reduce your credit. Going around and inquiring different places, like if I look at your credit score, I can see where and when and how many times you applied for credit. So going around and saying, I think I'm going to see if I can get a credit card here. I'm going to see if I can get a couch loan here. That decreases your credit score as well. So maybe take a step back and say, well, I'm not going to look today because last month I inquired to see if I could get that. What improves it is, of course, paying down stuff, keeping your revolving debt at like less than 50% utilized really helps it. We also sometimes just called on your credit score, it's called a BNI score, and it's how likely you are to go bankrupt. And a lot of people don't even know that score exists. But we also look at that score. Also, people get so afraid if there's a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal on your credit. People are like, well, I want this loan, but full disclosure, 3 years ago, I filed bankruptcy. My first question is, okay, what happened 3 years ago? Because if you filed bankruptcy because you just stopped answering phone calls and just decided not to pay your loans one day, that's different versus a marital breakdown or a significant death in your life, or some life event that happened that you had no choice but not to pay your bills, versus someone who just went on a shopping spree and decided not to pay their credit. So those things, while your credit score is a number, there's a story behind that number. And that's something that I love to talk to people about. And every time I pull their credit bureau, I say, this is your credit score. Do you know what this means? And they're like, well, I think that's good. So then I go in to explain, well, it's good because of this. And I let them know what they can do to improve, what they could do to make it worse. And people generally enjoy that. They like to know what it means.
Yeah, credit scores, my credit score, I have a love-hate relationship with it. Mm-hmm. I struggle with the way our credit system is built, because I think that, like, I've been paying rent since I was 21 years old, but my rent history plays no part in my credit history, but my credit score is what decides whether or not I can buy a house or get a mortgage. But the things that impact my credit score, like my cell phone bill. So for me, my personal experience is the thing I had to let go in order to keep the roof over my head was my cell phone bill. So I had to default on a cell phone bill that I couldn't pay. And it went like $1,200 into collections. It became the worst form of collections you can get. I think it's like rated R, or like that's whatever.
And worst R9
yes,
is
the worst. The worst it could go. But I kept the roof over my head. I paid my rent. I made sure that I was never late for those things. But then on my credit score, my credit looked shot because I didn't pay my phone bill, but I kept the roof over my head. So I struggle with credit scores for that specific reasoning. And I know that that's something a lot of other people can relate to. However, my credit score was what really helped me rebuild my confidence with my money. Whatever you're using, tracking your credit, what I was using gave me lots of information, so I could open up, ask questions, do it all online without being in front of a person. And I was in such a fragile state when I found out my credit score that I think if I would have been in front of somebody, it would have been it genuinely would have been miserable. However, I've built my credit almost to 800 in the last 3-4 years from a non-existent score. And like, I've put in that work by changing my things and learning. But I didn't know, and I hope this doesn't blow anybody else's mind, but this blew my mind, that there's like a happy medium to credit. Like you need to have credit, like you can't just pay off all your bills and your credit score go up. Like in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I'll pay off all of my debt, I'll close all of my credit cards, and then my credit score will go up. And then I did all of that, and I was like, oh shit, I have no credit
I was just
anymore.
going
Like,
to say, if I look at a credit bureau and they have no trade lines, meaning no debt open, that's just as big of a red flag as someone who has 7.
right. So learning that was that was terrifying, because in my brain I was so far in, like, I need to get out of debt. I need to get out of debt. I need all my debt gone, that I was like, oh shoot.
Yes.
Some of this debt is valuable. Some of this credit that I have is important in rebuilding trust and rebuilding this number, and learning about, and I did all of that through the online platform that I was using to track my credit score, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, it's a very nuanced topic, credit scores are, because they play such a high value in the things that you're doing, but they can be used as like a motivating factor, which is, for me, and it's something that I've been super proud of and really held on to over the last like year of rebuilding that credit. But I definitely, again, needed to talk to somebody when I was rebuilding my credit, because I probably could have rebuilt my credit score a little bit quicker than I had I not just dove in with 2 feet to pay off every single debt that I have and closed every single credit card that I had, because then I had to go through reapplying for things and thinking that. So yeah, it's been a complicated journey for me, Deena.
Yeah, no, and you're not alone.
Did you know that credit unions got their start giving loans to small businesses that weren't seen as viable by others? They were also the first place to lend money to women on their own, and credit unions brought the first ATMs to Canada. So aside from being trailblazers, their people and community-first attitude makes them the perfect place for all your money matters. Whether you're opening your first account, looking for a mortgage, or just seeking some simple advice for saving, they'll take care of you. Credit unions are proud to sponsor Your 2 Cents, the podcast, because they know the more we talk about money, the less scary it'll be.
And Deena, I think one thing that you touch on that's so important for people is that life will throw things at you. And so when people come in the door, it's not always because they're a person who's younger and maybe didn't know what they were doing and are trying to change their ways. You know, in the case of Alicia and I, we learned as we were kind of coming up through this, and some decisions in our younger lives impacted us as we sort of moved through and learned more about money. Life is going to happen to people. And I've seen that happen to people that I love and care about, where all of a sudden they are in a different situation that they've never been in before. And then all of a sudden there's financial repercussions that come along with that, or financial consequences that happen. And that's just adding insult to injury of what that person is going through in that moment. And so when we did the Empowering Women conference with the credit unions back in the springtime, one of the things I thought that was so amazing that the credit unions talk to people about is consumer proposals and bankruptcy, because you're right. It's not necessarily a label that, you know, gets stamped on someone and that moves through them without any context. There's a person behind that assignment to that term. And so going and talking to somebody, and we're continuing to say, come and talk to people, but you just breaking down someone's credit score to someone, I could not tell you right now. I don't actually know my credit score. All I've been told is that it's good. I've been able to rebuild my credit over the years, but no one ever actually stopped and said, can I explain why it's good to you? And I think that would be really helpful for me as well, to have someone actually break that down. But imagine being in a situation where you're restarting your life again because of whatever circumstance. You don't have to do that by yourself. And you're not also expected to know the answers to those questions. If you feel like you've been financially responsible your whole life, and now you've ended up in a situation and you're older, that can feel really shameful too, because you're going, did I do all the right things? And now I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And so I just think, again, like, this is all, we had a really wonderful conversation with someone about mental health and money. Talking to a financial advisor that you can trust, that's a warm, squishy place to land, is part of your mental health, and it's part of rebuilding that situation you're coming through. And so I think just knowing that there are resources there that are actually there to help you move through a really hard time, and that they're not going to shake their finger at you and say, you screwed up, you shouldn't have done this, you made bad life choices. It's the first step to people regaining their financial security, their mental health, going back into the right direction and feeling empowered that they can turn things around for themselves with the help of somebody, but they don't have to do it by themselves.
Yeah. And not to put a plug in for credit unions versus banks, but that's, to me, that's the credit union difference, is that we will sit down with you and explain why and how and how it can change for the future versus, I mean, and banks are great too, but versus the bank where they would say, well, this is what it is and this is, you're declined. So, that's,
you put that plug in, Deena. You put that
I'm
plug
gonna
in
put
there.
the plug in. That's the credit.
Put it in there.
It is. But I think that's such an important piece. And again, this is not just like a shameless promotion of the credit unions. I have dealt with traditional lenders a lot in my past, and it is a full stop no, and you don't know why. And then trying to get a hold of someone to talk to you about things, it's terrifying. I never thought in a million years I would be able to buy a house because I had made bad choices when I was younger that damaged my credit and made me feel terrified to talk to people about my money. And so I just think that there is something about an organization that fundamentally says to people, I believed in women to lend to women when other people weren't lending to women. I believe in investing in small businesses because other traditional lenders won't lend to them. Money is about more than the label we've attached to it. There's the person, there's the context, there's the history. And so I really think like I have such a special place in my heart for credit unions because I think it really is different. And I just think it's like part of the toolkit of your success from your financial and your mental health well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah. And financial health speaks so much to mental health, and like that's a whole other topic. Recently I went through a very tragic personal loss. I lost my spouse a couple of months ago, and the way that the community came together and just like brought cards and there was I believe there was a GoFundMe page set up, and I was able to appropriately grieve the loss of my spouse because I didn't have that financial stress to worry about because the community came together. And like there's so much to be said about how much financial stress can play on your mental health. And I remember my mom asked me, she goes, Deena, are you okay? I said, I mean, I'm sad, but I will be okay. I don't have this stress right now to worry about, but I will be okay. So there's something to be said about the link between financial stress and mental health. There really is.
100%. And
Absolutely.
like obviously listening to you, one, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us, but two, just to understand that it's more than just money. Money is more than just money. It's attached to human beings who are living their lives, who are trying to get by, who are trying to navigate this world. And to hear you talk about, really giving people the chance to elaborate on their context and share who they are, I think is that connection that I don't think I've ever had with me and my money. I don't think I've ever felt connected to my money and who I am. And so I wholeheartedly agree. The darkest times that I have been through have also been connected to me, burying my head in the sand and not knowing what was going on in my financial life and the things that I was struggling with. So I completely agree with that.
And it's, again, it just speaks to life can throw things at people. And thank you for sharing that. And we're so sorry. And we're so thankful that you have such an incredible community around you. And I think the other thing it speaks to is there's real people behind the financial side of things who can relate to you and can share with you and can say, I've been there before, I understand. And I think that's the other thing that's so important. Like, I know there's all this talk about AI and robots and moving online and all these things. No robot's ever going to be able to say to you, okay, I've been through something similar. Let's talk it out. Let's find a way through, because robots aren't dealing with the real life shit and the real people are. And so I think that's such a huge piece of it all, is that with great loss comes a lot of money. And I lost my father last year, and I was the executor of the estate, and you're dealing with grief and money at the exact same time. And that is wild. And there's no one's putting the pause button on to say, okay, you get to deal with these things separately. It's like, it's all just sitting there in front of you. And so I think we all need to remember like the compassion in those moments too. Like there's so much going on, but if you can at least have someone in your corner to help you navigate the money side so that you can deal with your grief and your tough time, it's everything. It's such a huge piece to be able to contend with. And so there's a lot of really confusing things. We could go into so many different avenues of this, but even just dealing with that stuff is something I'd never known about. I had no idea what I was doing. And there were so many terms and questions and dates and forms and stuff. And you're like, can I just cry for a while? Like, let me do that. And unfortunately, this is not the way that it works. So I think, there's obviously people there who can help you move through those things too. But yeah, money is going to keep happening regardless of what life's going to throw at you, but you don't have to do it by yourself.
Yeah. Come to our credit union. We'll help you.
You can do it with the Deena. You can do it with Deena. Do it with Deena. That's our new motto.
I'm going to get a shirt.
I know. Do it with Deena. I want to know, because I feel like you've really done such a wonderful job of like humanizing what it is to be a financial advisor, to be working in the financial world. Why do you do what you do, Deena? Like, what is the most rewarding part about being a financial advisor, about working for the credit unions? You've referred to yourself as a financial nerd a few times, but what fills your cup in the world of like finance and the credit unions?
Well, first of all, I've been in the credit union system for 6 years. We always talk like it's like a jail. I've been in the system for 6 years.
It sounds like a great jail to be in.
Yeah, I know. But if you would have asked me just over 6 years ago, are you going to be in the financial world? I would have been like, you're joking. Because I very much like Alicia was like, I don't know anything about a credit score or interest rate or anything. But the more I learned and the more I actually started off member facing, and I was a teller, and the more I had people come in and say, Deena, like, you just make me feel safe, and you explain it like you don't make me feel dumb. I'm like, that is my goal, because I've had so many of those instances in my life where I've asked a question and someone has made me feel stupid for asking that question. I don't ever want anyone to feel like that. So when I get someone say, oh, thank you for explaining it in a way I understand, that's what does it for me. I love when someone says, oh, I finally get it. I'm like, yeah, I did my job.
Yeah,
I just amazing. Love you, Deena.
Me too. I could talk to you about money forever.
Yeah, well, I will talk to you about money forever. I could do that.
I feel like if Deena was the face of money and all things scary, people would ask more questions and be doing more with their finances.
Well, I welcome anyone who has a question. I can't say I have it right away, but I will find the answer for you.
I love it. I was going to ask the question to you. We just talked about hard stuff and hard times. And I've felt in the past that like if money is tight or hard or challenging, I've just buried my head in the sand and not wanted to talk about it. If you could give someone any advice for just opening up the conversation, if they aren't lucky enough to have you specifically for them to talk to, what do you think someone could ask when they don't quite know how to start asking questions?
So as open and honest as I am, sometimes I deal with anxiety and I don't want to call. So I don't want to pick up the phone and call somebody. Are you kidding me? Like, I will text you. Don't call me. but like taking that step to make the appointment, to pick up the phone and say, just be honest. Like, look, I don't know what this means. I just need someone to help me. And I've recently went through that in dealing with my spouse's loss, and I had to contact the government, CRA, for like Canada pension stuff. And that stuff I'm not so great with, so don't call me for that. But, but I had to call somebody and I'm like, look, I don't know who I need to talk to, but I just need an answer. And just feel it. You know how people say like you have to find a therapist that kind of works for you. It's the same thing with financial literacy and your banker. You have to find someone that you drive with, because if you feel intimidated, you're not going to get what you need from the conversation. So just take the step and reach out and hopefully you find a Deena eventually. But other than that, yeah, like it's stay away from Google. Google is scary. Don't Google. Same thing with your health, Dr. Google. Like don't
Yeah.
don't Google.
Don't diagnose your financial health through Google.
Exactly.
Yeah. And do you think so? I think maybe if I can deduce from what you're saying is even if you don't know the question to ask, picking up the phone and saying that I need help. I don't even know what to ask.
Exactly.
Can I talk to someone? And I think even just being that straight up to say, no idea what I'm doing right now. Because sometimes you're going, I don't even know what I would ask them. And the great news is you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So,
I equate this to therapy too, because last week I went into therapy and I was like, I have nothing to talk about. And I had one of the most wonderful breakthrough sessions I've ever had because I didn't know what to ask. I was like, okay. And I went in saying, this is sort of something I guess I could talk to you about, or this is what I'm dealing with in my life right now. And so I think sometimes when you just start with nothing, you can actually have someone open up the right avenue to go, okay, this is actually what you're looking for. And it's so much easier said than done when you're in it and you feel like you're drowning. But I do think it's just that first step is to just have that conversation and be straight up with, I don't even know what to ask you right now. I just need to talk.
And just know that you are not alone. There are so many people out there that are in the same boat, or worse or better, or we're not the same, but we're not alone.
Absolutely.
No.
Oh, you're amazing.
I know.
Thank you.
I'm putting that on a t-shirt. Do it with Deena.
Do it with Deena.
Dollars with Deena.
Oh, dollars with Deena. That's the new title of our episode.
Yeah.
Dollars with Deena. I love it. Okay, Deena, we're gonna get to like the fun part of these episodes. Not that this hasn't been fun, but the funnest part of these episodes is that we've been asking all of our guests the same kind of final speed round questions. I say speed, but take your time. No need to rush. We're going to kind of just go back and forth asking you these questions. We answered them on our first episode that we had, me, Sylvia, and Jonathan. So for anybody who's just tuning in for the first time, you can go hear Sylvia and I's answers from the first episode, but we're going to get Deena's. Okay. So what is the best thing you've ever spent money on?
I have to say a good mattress.
Ooh,
I love that answer.
That's a new one.
Because
I like it.
I love sleep.
Yes.
I love sleep, and if I don't have a good night's sleep, I am not on my game, and I'm a sleep snob. Like I need like the right temperature, and I need the right pillow, and I need the right blanket, and a good mattress is something that I always say invest in. Yeah.
Deena, if you want to help me with the finances part, I will talk to you about sleep and all of the sleep products that you can possibly imagine. I know far too much about prioritizing sleep and like being cold and comfortable and the best mattress. I could talk about that for days. I'm right there with you.
We'll schedule a different call. I'll have my people call your people.
Yeah, okay. I
love the
that.
sleep call. Okay, what's the worst thing you've ever spent money on?
Oh goodness. Probably an everyday thing. Fast food, I would say, probably is the worst thing I spend money on. Like you just spent $300 on groceries. Go home and cook a damn meal. Bring your lunch. Don't go to Dairy Queen.
But in the moment, it doesn't feel so bad, you know?
I know, but when you look at your bank statement like you're supposed to, and you see all of those coffees and Dairy Queens and yeah, it's just, I hate that I spend money on fast food. But
the worst and the best thing I ever did was I got a card that actually like files and folders all of that information for me when I'm spending on it. So it tells me where my spending habits are. That was the worst thing I ever did. And the best, because it like you open your card balance and it's like, you've spent X amount of dollars on fast food. And you're like, damn it.
Yeah.
I didn't need to see that full number. Thanks a lot. Okay, Deena, have you ever lied about how much money that you have?
Absolutely. I'm so sorry, but yes, of course I have.
Don't apologize. Everyone
said
this question the exact
But yeah, no, when you're at a coffee shop or when you're out with your friends and they're like, well, let's just go grab lunch, and you're like, I have exactly $4.74 in my account. But you bet your ass I'm going to transfer from my savings instead of telling that person I don't have money. I mean, it's terrible advice. I don't advise you do it, but Yeah, no, I would not want to be embarrassed, and it's terrible, but everyone feels the same. So you're not
Well,
alone.
we've been having this conversation. We talked about it, about how much better all of our lives would be if we just talked more about money, and
Yes.
how fulfilling it is to kind of set those boundaries and be able to say, I want to experience this with you, but I can't afford it. And how
Yes.
there's like no shame in being able to say those things. But for
Mhm.
some reason, and it doesn't matter if you don't have a lot of it or you feel like you're finally in a stable point.
Yeah.
Like whether it was when I was putting things back in the grocery store to where I feel like I am financially now, I still lie about how much money I make because I
Mhm.
still feel shame around the stigma on money, whether you have it or you don't have it. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I teach my kids because they'll ask me for something. I'm like, sorry, I don't have money. I can't. And they're like, Mom, you have money. We know you do. And I said, no, it's not in my budget. I have money, but it's not in my budget for that right now.
I love it.
Yeah, I try and teach them, like, it's not that I don't have money. I have money, but not for that.
Well, that's such a different nuance. We talked to Melissa Leong, who's a financial guru, and she said she gave us a tip on sort of reframing that. It's not that I'm broke, it's that that's not in my budget right now. And she said one of them is empowering, and the other one gets your friends on board
Mhm.
of what you're spending on. And I just think it's such a perfect flip because you don't want to scare your kids into thinking, my mom doesn't have any money. What's going to happen to me? It's, oh, that's just not a thing that we're doing right now. And the faster that you can get people learning about budgeting and stuff, I love having a budget. So I'm so on board, but I went a very long time without one. And I think that's such a great flip. Because I remember my parents talking about that too. And I'd go, you for sure have money.
You definitely have
I
money.
know what you're doing. And then they're
Yeah.
like, no, I don't. And then that's a different reaction as a kid that you get too. So I love that you're using that language. I think it's so sorry. I mean, you're a financial expert, so I'm not surprised, but I really like it. That's a
But
great,
yeah, it's empowering. It's
yeah.
empowering. And then it allows your kids to then turn and be able to have that same conversation with their friends when they're in a position, because it's scary. It's scary to say no to things, and it's scary because you don't want to like hurt people's feelings. But honestly, with all of the conversation that we've had about how your financial health is so directly attached to your mental health and it's it's important that we prioritize that type of language and those types of conversations, because whether you're paying for it by not going to the experience or you're paying for it by going to the experience and then losing out on money in other areas, either way, somewhere you're paying for it.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, the last question in our speed round. What is the best tip about money you could share with someone?
This one, you probably have heard it many times before, but I always like to frame it like this. Pay yourself first. And you're going to say, Deena, I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't have the money. I always say, treat yourself and your savings like a monthly bill and pay to your savings just like every other reoccurring bill. And don't forget, it only can be $5. I'm sure everybody has $5 they can set aside. And I say that, and I shouldn't say that because I've been in a situation where I've had like negative amount, but try to pay yourself first. You're your most valuable asset. And just,
I love that.
yeah, you have to pay yourself first.
Amazing. This has been so wonderful. You are such a delight. And I think such a good reminder that the people out there who are helping you deal with your money care and are kind and get it and have lived life and have had to come up against tough decisions and, having $4 in your bank account. We've all been there. And I think we forget that sometimes, that it feels like such an imbalance of power, but you are such a reminder that we can have these conversations in a really, I always keep saying, in a squishy way. Cause for me, I like to feel like I can do that. And I just so appreciate you being so honest with us today and sharing such great information.
You know how I feel about you, Deena.
Yeah, girl.
I just love you. I just love you. I just think, honestly, it has been so cool to put a face to the people that I think I have villainized for so long. And I think we're all guilty of that. Like you said, you did it too. And then when you meet somebody like Deena, you're like, oh shit. I could have been friends with Deena. I could have been friends with my financial advisor. And I think that obviously it's like anything. I'm sure that there's not everybody's like you in a sense, but I think that we do such a good job of like demonizing the things that we're scared of. And I think what you do is so important, Deena, and I think you're like that level of love and care and like why you do what you do is so important to this world, and it's going to have such an, and probably already has had an incredible impact on a lot of people. So I'm grateful that you spent this time with us, and I know that there's so many people that are going to be looking for their Deenas after this conversation. So
yes, find your Deena. And yeah, thank you for joining the Dollars with Deena train.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm so happy to be part of Dollars with Deena.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Jonathan's going to have a hoot with that one.
Yeah, he sure is. We're going to get him
Definitely.
a shirt too. He's also part of your club, 100%. Well, thank you for your time and your brain. We so appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. And hey, don't be afraid to ask the questions you really need answers to, no matter how small they might seem. The great thing about the team at credit unions is they actually love talking about money. So step outside your comfort zone and into a credit union to start getting the answers you're dying to know. Thanks for listening to Your 2 Cents, the podcast, proudly made by Canadian Content Studios in partnership with credit unions.